Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is MUSA. Today I want to explain about the crimes against humanity. As a for background, it is not clear in which context the term crimes against humanity was first developed. Some scholars point to the use of this term or very similar terms as early as late 80s or early 90s century, particularly in the context of slavery and the slave trade, and to describe atrocities associated with the European colonialism in Africa and elsewhere as such. For example, the atrocities committed by Leopold II of Belgium in the Congo Free State. Other scholars point to the declaration issued in 1915 by allied governments, France, Great Britain, and Russia, condemning the mass killing of Armenians in the Ottoman Empire to be the origin of the use of the term as a label for a category of international crimes. Since then, the notion of crimes against humanity has evolved under international customary law and through jurisdiction of international courts such as the International Criminal Courts, the International Criminal Tribunals for the former Yugoslavia, and the International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda. Many states have also criminalized crimes against humanity in their domestic law. Others have yet to do so. Crimes against humanity have not yet been codified in dedicated treaty of international law, unlike genocide and war crimes, although there are efforts to do so. Despite this, the, the prohibitions of crimes against humanity, similar to the prohibition of genocide, has been considered a peremptory norm of international law from which no derogation is permitted and which is applicable to all states. The 1998 Rome Statute established the International Criminal Code, Rome Statute, is the document that reflects the latest consensus among the international community on this matter. It is also the treaty that offers the most extensive list of specific acts that may constitute the crimes. Crimes against humanity, um, genocide and war crimes have been codified in the treaties, whereas crime against humanity are well known as a CAH have evolved under customary law. Against crimes against humanity was first charged under the Nuremberg Tribunal Charter. The definition of CAH was set out in the Charter and the Nuremberg Judgment. The UN General Assembly endorsed the concept of crimes against humanity in 1946. The content of crimes against humanity have evolved since WW2 through the jurisprudence of the ICTY, ICTR, and ICC. The statutes of the international tribunals generally reflects crimes against humanity as they existed under customary international law. However, there are some differences in the contextual requirements for the crimes against humanity in the statutes of the various international tribunals. Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court, Article 7. According to Article 7, crimes against humanity. For the purpose of this statute, crimes against humanity means any of the following acts when committed as part of a widespread of systematic attack direct against any civilians population with knowledge of the attacks, which is murder, extermination, enslavement, deportation or forcible transfer of populations, imprisonment or other severe deprivation of physical liberty, in violation of fundamental rules of international law: torture, rape, sexual slavery, and forced prostitutions, forced pregnancy, and forced sterilizations, or any other forms of sexual violence of comparable gravity. Perse- persecu- Persecutions against any identifiable group or collectivity on political, racial, national, ethnic, cultural, religious, gender, as defined in Article 3, or other grounds that are universally recognized as impermissible under international law. In connections with any act referred to in this paragraph or any crime within the jurisdiction of the court. Enforced disappearance of persons, the crimes of apartheid, other inhuman acts of a similar character in intentionally causing great suffering or serious injury to body or to mental or physical health. For the purpose of paragraph 1, attack directs against any civilian populations means that a cause, a course of conduct involving a multiple commission of act referred to in paragraph 1 against any civilian populations pursuant to or in furtherance of a state or organizational policy to commit such attack. Examinations include the international inflictions, the conditions of life, inter alia, the deprivations of the access to food and medicines, calculated to bring out the destruction of part of populations. Enslavement means the exercise of any or all the power attaching to the rights of the ownerships over the person and includes the exercise of such power in the course of trafficking in person, in particular, women and children. Deportation or forcible transfer of populations means forced displacement of the person concerned by expulsions or other coercive act from the area in which they are lawfully present without grounds permitted under international law. Torture, torture means the intentional inflictions of severe pain or suffering, whether physical or mental, upon a person in the custody or under the control of the accused, except torture shall not include pain or suffering arising only from, inherent in, or incidental to lawful sanctions. Forced pregnancy means the unlawful confinement of a woman forcibly made pregnant with the intent of affecting the ethnic composition of any population, or carrying out other grave violation of international law. These definitions shall not in any way to be interpreted as affecting national laws relating to pregnancy. Next, persecution. Persecution means that the intentional and severe deprivation of the fundamental right contrary to the international law by a reason of the identity of the group or collectively. Next, the crime of apartheid. The crime of apartheid means that inhuman act of a character similar to those referred to in paragraph 1, committed in the context of any institutionalized regime of systematic operations and domination by one racial group over any other racial groups or groups, any racial group or groups, and committed with the intention of maintaining that regime. Last, enforce disappearance of persons, which means that the arrest, detention, or abductions of a person by or with authorization, support, or acquiescence of a state or a political organization followed a refusal to acknowledge that deprivations of freedom or to give information on the fate or whereabouts of those persons, which the intention of removing them from the protection of the law for the prolonged period of time. The purpose of the statute is to understood that the term of gender to the two sexes, males and females, within the context of society. The term gender does not indicate any meaning different from above. In the 1990s, the international community established ad hoc tribunal to prosecute the perpetrators of crimes against humanity, as well as war crimes and genocide. These include the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia and the International Criminal for the Rwanda. Unlike previous international tribunals, the ICTY and the ICTR included rape and torture in the list of the crimes against humanity. Next, we move to the elements of the crimes against humanity. A crime against humanity is committed when, first, the accused committed a prohibited act. Two, this is part of an attack which is widespread or systematic and directed against any civilian populations. Three, and when there is a link or nexus between the acts of the accused and the attacks. The ICTY statute requires that the attack be committed in the context of the armed conflict. However, the court in the ICTY's case of the Dasko Tadid held that under customary international law, a connection with armed conflict is not required. The ICTR requires that the attack have a discriminatory elements. Neither of these elements are required by definition of crimes against humanity under customary international law. At the ICC, either of these additional element is required. Next, main elements of the crimes against humanity. A physical elements which include the commission of any of the following acts. First, murder. Second, extermination. Third, enslavement. Fourth, deportation or forcibly transfer of population. Fifth, imprisonment. Sixth, torture. Seven, grave form of sexual violence. 8. Persecutions. 9. Enforcement disappearance of person. 10. The crime of appetite. And lastly, other inhuman acts. So, as for the contextual elements, a crimes against humanity involve a commission of certain prohibition acts committed as a part of a widespread or systematic attack directed against the civilian population. When committed within this text, what would have been an ordinary domestic crime, such as a murder, become a crime against humanity. For the mental elements with knowledge of the text, the contextual elements determines that the crimes against humanity involve either large-scale violence in relation to the number of victims, or its extensions over a broad geographic area, which is a widespread, or a methodical type of violence, which is systematic. This excludes random, accidental, or isolated acts of the violence. In addition, Article 7, paragraph 2, clause A of the Rome Statute determines that the crimes against humanity must be committed in federates of the state or organizational policy to commit an attack. Plan or policy does not need to be explicitly stipulated or formally adopted and can therefore be inferred from the totality of the circumstances. As for the attack, in the case of the Jean Paul Akayesu, the trial judgment on 2 September 1998, the court states that a person who commits a crimes against humanity when he or she commits a prohibited act that form part of an attack. There's a factor who can be considered when determining whether it can be an attack against a civilian population. There is a six factor. The first one is whether discriminatory measures imposed by a relevant authority. Second, was there an authoritarian takeover of the region where the crime occurred? Third, did the new authority in fact establish governmental structures? Four, did summary arrest, detention, torture, rape, sexual violence, or other crimes take place? Five, did massive transfers of civilians to camp take place? And lastly, was the enemy population removed from the area? The concept of attack and military attacks is different. A crimes against humanity can occur when there is no armed conflict. Thus, an attack is not limited to the conduct of armed hostilities or use of armed force. According to the Dragojuk Kunarak and other cases, crime against humanity can include mistreatment of a civilian populations. The attack could also precede, outlast, or continue during the armed conflict without necessarily being part of it. The attack does not need to involve the military or the violent force. According to the Akayasu case, ICTY and ICTR jurisprudence and the Rome Statute provide that there must be at least multiple victims or act to be considered an attack directed against the civilian population referred to this this was referred to the decision in the case of Dragul Jukunarak and others. In Kliman Kayesh Hema and others, ICTR stated that the acts can be of the same type or different. So as for the other unhuman act, the ICTY appeal chamber in the case of the Stakit stated that ICTY statute Article 5 clause 1 covering other inhuman act was durably designed as a residual category as it was felt undesirable for this category to be exhaustively enumerated. An exhaustive categorization would merely create opportunities for evasion of this latter of the provisions. Other inhuman acts include those crimes against humanity that are not otherwise specific in the ICTY and ICTR statute, but are of terrible seriousness. The elements of the other inhuman act in the ICTR and ICTY are first, the occurrence of an act or omission of similar seriousness to the other enumerated acts. Second, the act or omission cause serious mental or physical suffering, or injury or constituted a serious attack on human dignity. Last but not least, the act or omission was performed deliberately by accused or persons for whose acts and omission he bears criminal responsibility. In Article 7, Clause A, in Article 7, Paragraph 1, Clause K of the Rome Statute, there is a threshold that other inhuman act must A. Be a similar character to the other prohibited act, and B. Cause great suffering or serious injury to body or to mental or physical health. In order to assess the seriousness of an inhuman act or omission, consideration must be given to all the factual circumstances of the case. These may include the nature of the act or omission, the context in which it occurred, the personal circumstances of this victim, including age, sex, and health, and the physical, mental, and moral effect of the act or omission upon the victims. The offenders must be intend to inflict inhuman act. At the same time, of an act or omissions, the offender had the intention to inflict serious physical or mental suffering or to commit a serious attack upon the human dignity of the victims, or knew that his act or omission was likely to cause serious physical or mental suffering or a serious attack upon human dignity. It is not required that the accused considered his action inhuman. So there is a prohibited underlying acts. The ICC has also incorporated the following acts under crimes against humanity. In the case of Kunara, it was stated that any of these acts can be crime against humanity if it is part of overall attack on civilians. And the case of the blast kit, if it is committed on a very large scale, such as using biological weapons against the civilian populations, it could by itself be considered the attack. The underlying acts to do have to be the same as the other act committed during the attack. A person who rapes a woman during a forceful takeover of powers could be guilty of the crimes against humanity of sexual violence. Some of the prohibited acts have special mental requirements, but in general, the perpetrators must have committed the act with intent and knowledge of the relevant circumstances. In contrast, the genocide crimes against humanity do not need to target a specific group. Instead, the victim of the attack can be any civilian populations, regardless of its affiliations or identity. Another important distinction is that in the case of the crimes against humanity, it is not necessary to prove that there is an overall specific intent. It suffices for there to be simple intent to commit any of the act listed, with the exception of the act of persecutions, which requires additional discriminatory intent. The perpetrators must also act with knowledge of the attack against the civilian population and that his or her action is part of the attack. That's all from me. Thank you.